obvious spoiler warning for Deltarune up to Chapter 4. The prophecy in Deltarune is now more relevant than ever after the release of Chapter 4, with the Church Dark World constantly revolving around showing you the prophecy, Ralsei who keeps on trying to hype what the prophecy is actually going to say, and of course the ending where Susie seems determined to want to change the outcome of the prophecy. We don't exactly know how the prophecy ends, but it does seem like the prophecy does not have a happy ending. So a central question that comes into a lot of people's minds is, can we actually change the prophecy? And if we can, how? What should the heroes do for the end of the prophecy to change? So, this is what I want to talk about today. Let me get straight to the point. I don't think the prophecy can actually be defied. No matter what you do, no matter what choices you make, the prophecy will always be fulfilled with how it's currently written. You can't dodge the prophecy, you can't change the prophecy, you can't rewrite the prophecy, and I believe this is also tying back to Deltarune's theme of not only your choices not mattering, but the seemingly questionable phrase of the game having one ending, quote unquote. And that ending is when the prophecy is fulfilled. No matter what you do, the game will always finish with the fulfillment of the last prophecy. So what, that's it? Does that mean what you do truly won't change anything? Does that mean that being kind to everybody and recruiting everybody will not affect the ending in any way? Does that mean like weird route will not affect the ending anyway? Well, no, I don't think that would be the case. So let me explain my thought process. Even though the fulfillment of the prophecy cannot be changed, I think there are some loopholes in the prophecies that can be taken advantage of to get a more desirable end, or perhaps an even worse end. Before we get to that, let me talk about the prophecy in general again, just so that we're on the same page. The prophecy talks about the story of the Deltarune, which is the central theme of the town's church that is represented by the symbol of, well, the Deltarune. The prophecy of the Deltarune speaks of 3 heroes which will banish the angels' heaven at Shadow's Edge, or they are phantasming the penumbra or some sort, I don't know. You can see the details of some of the prophecies when you're exploring the Church Dark World in Chapter 4, and while not everything is explicitly shown, the prophecy so far seems to be generally accurate to your adventure. They talk about the 3 heroes, they talk about the journey so far, even have specifics like what Lancer will say, and even puzzle solutions for the piano puzzles in Chapter 4. Things seems to be lining up just right with what we have so far. However, there are also a couple of other mysteries and theories surrounding the prophecies that we have seen. I want to focus on these 3 prophecies in particular. And last was the girl, at last was the girl, the second hero, the girl with hope crossed on her heart, and finally, love finds its way to the girl. These 3 prophecies caused some discussions in the community for several different reasons. One of them is the fact that the at last was the girl seemingly contradicts the second hero prophecy. One is saying the last was the girl, while the other is saying the second hero. This seems to indicate that maybe these 2 prophecies potentially are talking about 2 different persons, that the last girl is not the girl with hope crossed on her heart. There's many different theories that people can make from this, but basically this seems to make many believe that there are 2 different girls in the prophecy, and maybe one of them is supposed to be Noelle. Plus, the Hope Girl seems to be holding a sword despite Susie not being a sword user. That, and Ralsei talks about how Susie is supposed to be able to equip ribbons even though she's vehemently against ever using ribbons. Meanwhile, Noelle can both equip a sword and is actually open to be using ribbons. Granted, the only sword she can currently equip is her own holiday pencil, which is currently not replicable through normal means. We just know that it's possible through the game codes. Therefore, it's theorized that Noelle is supposed to be in the main cast, while Susie being in the adventure might end up breaking the prophecy in some way because she's not actually supposed to be there. The theories doesn't only stop here. Other people also theorize that perhaps the true prophecy is actually talking about the weird route, because in the weird route, Noelle has a more stronger tie into the story that would be more relevant in the prophecy. Not to mention, the prophecy of the girl finding love is also often theorized that perhaps the love in this prophecy is actually the same love in Undertale, level of violence. There's loads of different theories for the prophecies, but that's the gist of it. Going back to how to break the prophecy and stuff, the general outlook based on these theories are that either Susie will break the prophecy because she's not supposed to be in the team, or Weird Route is actually the way to break the prophecy, or Weird Route is the prophecy and maybe being pacifist is the way to break the prophecy. However, I'm going to propose an entirely different look on this. Like I've mentioned, I do not think that the prophecy can be defied. I don't think it can be rewritten. I don't think it can be changed. I don't think it can be, like, dodged, I guess. But that doesn't mean that you can't change the true outcome. So, hear me out. You see, I think that the prophecy have 2 very strong loopholes, and one of the loophole is something that we can already see happening in the game back in Chapter 3. The main star of the show for this is none other than Tenna. One of the prophecies mentioned that the Lord of Screens will be cleaved red by blade. This is of course referring to Tenna, where at the end of chapter 3 gets cleaved by the blade of the Roaring Knight. No matter what you do in chapter 3, whether you're kind to everybody or you're gaining strength by attacking everybody and you've got all of the eggs and secrets and all that stuff, there is nothing you can do to change this. Tenna will always get cleaved by the blade of the Knight. The prophecy will always happen. However, that doesn't mean that Tenna's fate cannot be changed. Some of you may see in your playthroughs that in chapter 4, the TEVI would be smashed beyond recognition, but many of you would know that this isn't the only outcome. If you are kind and have not lost a recruit, the Shadow Guy in Pippins will help Susie in fixing Tenna, and in chapter 4, he'll be just slightly beat up, but he's alive and you can even bring him to your Dark World where he seems to be just fine and dandy, and definitely not gloomy. Maybe sometimes gloomy. And this is loophole number 1. Tenna will always be fated to be cut down by the Roaring Knight, yes, but whether Tenna actually survives or not is something that you can actually still change. You can counteract the result of what happens in the prophecy, even though you may not be able to stop it from happening entirely. I do believe that this can be true in future prophecies as well. Perhaps if there was a big tragedy that happens in the end of the prophecy, we can still counteract and fix that problem afterwards. Maybe for example, if someone needs to be sacrificed, then perhaps being kind to everyone can get you like enough magical power of friendship to bring them back to life or something. I don't know. I cannot theorize on like the specific details on like what will happen and how to counteract it. It's just that I believe that whatever tragedy that will happen can be fixed. The prophecy dictates what happens, but not what won't happen. That is loophole number 1. Now, loophole number 2 is a little more related to the weird route prophecy thing that I've mentioned earlier. You know, how some theories would say that maybe Susie's not part of the prophecy, or Noelle's actually the prophecy hero, or the love is level of violence, or weird route is actually the prophecy, and so on and so on and so on. There's a lot of different interpretation on what the truth of the prophecy is, but the way I see it, I think all of these can still be following the prophecy at the same time. If you are going to do the weird route, the prophecy will still be fulfilled. If you are doing everything peacefully, the prophecy will still be fulfilled. If Noelle is actually the second party member, then the prophecy will still be fulfilled the same. Let me explain more. I think the prophecy does not actually really fuss about details. Whether Susie or Noelle is the second girl, or if love is actually level of violence, or if love is actually just true love, or if love is actually two people battling in a dojo together, whatever it is, as long as it's resembling as fulfilling the prophecy, that would still count. That would still count as fulfilling the prophecy. Perhaps at the end of the prophecy, if someone were to be sacrificed, then maybe that someone can actually allude to multiple different characters. Or the sacrifice can mean different things and doesn't necessarily lead to death. Perhaps if the prophecy says the point that one will say toothpaste and boy, it might not necessarily mean Lancer, it might mean someone else that is pointed. Okay, well, I mean, to be fair, that one I'm pretty sure it inevitably happens in chapter 1, but you get what I mean. If one interpretation of the prophecy does not happen, then it can happen in an entirely different way. It will still happen, but it can happen in multiple different interpretations. Or as Ralsei says, even if it's broken, it always appears somewhere else. You can't escape the prophecy, but you can make it happen in a different way. That is the second loophole of the prophecy. Unfortunately, unlike the first loophole, we don't actually have a proper example of this in Deltarune yet, right? Most of the prophecy that we see have not actually happened, and most of the prophecy that have actually happened is kind of a clear cut. We basically have no clear example in Deltarune where a prophecy can be taken in multiple different ways. That's never happened in Deltarune. But it has happened in Undertale. In Undertale, there too is the prophecy of the Deltarune. However, the prophecy in Undertale seems to be different than what we have in the Deltarune game. Most monsters don't even remember the details of the Deltarune prophecy anymore, and the only one that talks about it is none other than the old man himself, Gerson Boom. After all, he's old! He mentioned that this is a prophecy where the general idea is that some sort of angel who has seen the surface will make the underground go empty. That's really all the information that we have. If you're doing the pacifist route, this is definitely fulfilled as the prophecy says, where the angel who has seen the surface will bring us freedom. But as many of you may know, this prophecy is also fulfilled if you were to do the genocide route, where the angel who has seen the surface will bring the monsters freedom. That is, freedom from their mortal realm. And so with this, the prophecy is fulfilled in completely different ways. And I think this might be where Deltarune is heading towards too. Now, while I did say that the multi-meaning prophecy thing isn't a thing that we have actually seen happen in Deltarune, there is a theme of taking the prophecy in multiple meaning. I'm of course talking back about Gerson's book, Lord of the Hammers. Yeah, it all goes back to Gerson. His book is based off the prophecy, and even the chapters seems to follow the same chapters with Deltarune. But he still managed to find a way to make the story so compelling, so interesting, that even something that is so well known like the prophecy can be retold in a way that it ends up being a best-selling book, and even end up being the inspiration of Dragon Blazers, which is a game that Susie seems to really like. Lord of the Hammers itself seems to be incomplete without an ending currently, but just like the hero's fate, we should be able to still write the ending in a way that we want. Perhaps the ending is still going to somehow resemble the ending of the prophecy, but it can still be tweaked to be more hopeful, even if it's supposedly based off the same ending as the prophecy. Perhaps there's no way to ever be able to dodge the prophecy or change the prophecy. The prophecy will always happen with how it's written, but maybe there's a different way to interpret the prophecy. Perhaps there's a better way or an even worse way. And perhaps that even if it is inevitably bad, there's still something that you can do to make everything better or make everything worse. But whatever you do, the prophecy is always fulfilled. The prophecy itself is inevitable, but how you get there, how you react to it, and the consequences of it all, that can be altered. And maybe that's what it means for the game to have one ending. It ends after the prophecy is fulfilled, but that can be fulfilled in different ways and it can still have a different result. I guess in a way, it's kind of like the inevitability of death, you know? We're all going to die eventually, right? There's no escaping that. But whether you die a happy person or whether you die filled with regrets or whether you die with your closest family and friends around you or you die alone with people spitting on your graves, all of those can be changed by your own actions. The end of the story will always be when you close the book, but stories can be rewritten. What's in the story, how good the story is, how it will affect the readers, all of those can be changed as long as you have the pen in your hands. We all still have the white pen known as hope. Isn't that right? Oh my goodness, my videos are getting way too sappy. I need something else more silly to actually counteract this. Well, probably just go back like Battlecats after this anyway, so whatever. We'll see. Anyways, that's my general take on the prophecy. You can't fully change the inevitable, but your choices still matters regardless. So if you feel like what you do is hopeless, or if things don't matter in the end, then perhaps you just haven't found the exact right thing that you need yet. Hold on to your hope in your heart, and your pen in your mind. With the right mind and an open heart, you'll find the right time for your hope to shine and to forge your own path. You have that hope crossed in your heart. Hope crossed somewhere. Somewhere that can't be erased. Don't forget. And I'll catch you another time. See ya.